Richard Thompson stood at the construction site that was supposed to be his dream resort, staring at nothing but overgrown weeds and a concrete foundation that led nowhere. The tropical sun beat down mercilessly on the abandoned lot in Hua Hin, and the sound of distant waves mocked him with their indifference. In his trembling hand, he held a stack of property documents that a Thai lawyer had just confirmed were worthless forgeries, expertly crafted fakes that had cost him $1,200,000 and everything he had worked for across 40 years of business. 3 months earlier, this empty plot had represented hope, partnership, and a second chance at happiness. Narirat Sornchai, the elegant woman he had planned to marry, had stood beside him right here, her hand in his, describing the boutique resort they would build together. She had painted vivid pictures of guest bungalows nestled among palm trees, an infinity pool overlooking the Gulf of Thailand, a restaurant serving fusion cuisine that would attract wealthy tourists from around the world. She had called him husband, even though they were not yet married, and he had believed that finally, after years of loneliness following his wife's death, he had found someone who saw him not just as a wealthy foreigner, but as a partner, a companion, a man worthy of love. Now, standing alone in the scorching heat with sweat soaking through his linen shirt, Rick understood the brutal truth. Narirat had never loved him. The resort had never been real. Every tender moment, every whispered promise, every tear she had shed in his arms, all of it had been meticulously calculated performance designed to separate him from his money. And she had succeeded beyond what he could have imagined possible. The retirement he had planned so carefully, the $2,300,000 he had earned by selling his car dealership chain in San Diego, the comfortable future he had envisioned spending in tropical paradise, all of it was gone. At 68 years old, Richard Thompson had been reduced from a millionaire to a man with barely enough savings left to survive another year. And the woman who had destroyed him had vanished completely, leaving behind nothing but forged documents, disconnected phone numbers, and the crushing weight of his own foolishness. If you've been enjoying the stories I create, please consider hitting the subscribe button. Your support is crucial for the growth of this channel and helps me dedicate time to making these videos despite my commitment to a full-time job. Thank you for being here. Richard Thompson, known to everyone as Rick, had built his success through decades of hard work and unwavering commitment to customer service. Born in 1,955 inches Cleveland, Ohio, he learned early that nothing in life came without effort. After working his way through community college, he secured a position at a Chevrolet dealership in San Diego at 23. Rick discovered a natural talent for connecting with customers. Over 15 years, he worked up to general manager, saved aggressively, and in 1995 purchased a struggling Ford dealership in El Cajon. The gamble paid off spectacularly. He transformed the failing dealership into one of San Diego County's most successful operations, eventually expanding to 3 dealerships across Southern California. By 2010, Thompson Automotive Group was generating annual revenues exceeding $50 million. Rick had married Linda at 32, and they raised 2 children, Michael and Jennifer. The family lived comfortably in La Jolla with ocean views and wanted for nothing materially. But success did not insulate anyone from tragedy. Linda was diagnosed with ovarian cancer in 2012 and died in 2014, leaving Rick devastated. His adult children, Michael, in finance in New York, Jennifer practicing law in Boston, called weekly and visited on holidays. But Rick sensed their discomfort around his grief. By 2017, Rick sold Thompson Automotive Group for $2,300,000. As he sat alone in his La Jolla house the night the sale finalized, the money felt meaningless. It could not bring Linda back or fill the silence that had become his constant companion. For 6 months, Rick tried traditional retirement golf, volunteering, brief dating attempts, but nothing addressed his loneliness. In June 2018, a former employee sent him a postcard from Thailand. "Boss, you should see this place. It's paradise for people like us who want to slow down and enjoy life." 2 weeks later, Rick booked a 1-month trip to Thailand. His children were supportive, perhaps relieved their father was finally doing something besides mourning. When Rick's plane touched down at Suvarnabhumi Airport in late July 2018, he had no idea he was about to meet the woman who would systematically destroy everything he had spent a lifetime building. He believed he was simply taking a vacation. In reality, He was walking directly into the most sophisticated and devastating trap of his entire life. Hua Hin was not what Richard Thompson expected. Unlike Bangkok's frantic energy or Phuket's tourist saturation, this seaside town possessed understated elegance that immediately appealed to him. Rick rented a modest condominium near Pattaya Beach and established a quiet routine of beach walks, market breakfasts, and local restaurants. At a seafood restaurant recommended by his landlord, Rick encountered Somchai Prazert, a well-dressed property developer who spoke excellent English. Their conversation flowed easily, and Somchai invited Rick to a networking event the following evening, an international real estate group meeting at the Hilton. The event drew perhaps 70 people, a mix of Thais and foreigners, developers and property managers. Rick conversed with a British couple running vacation rentals, an Australian retired contractor, and a Canadian hotel manager. It was during these conversations that Rick first saw Narirat Sornchai. She stood near the bar area, speaking with Somchai and other Thai professionals. She wore a tasteful navy dress, her hair in a neat bun, minimal jewelry. What struck Rick was not just her beauty, but her poise, a confidence that seemed different from other Thai women he had encountered. Rick did not approach her that evening. The setting felt too professional. Near the event's end, Somchai brought Narirat over for introductions. "Rick, this is Narirat Sornchai, one of the best interior designers working on luxury properties in this area," Somchai said. Narirat, Richard Thompson, retired businessman from California, exploring Hua Hin. Narirat extended her hand with a professional smile. Her handshake was firm, her English impeccable. "San Diego area?" she guessed correctly. Rick was impressed. "Yes, exactly. How did you know?" "Somchai mentioned you were in the automotive business. San Diego has strong car culture. I visited once for a design conference. Beautiful city." They spoke for 10 minutes about her interior design work, his business background, the differences between California and Thai coastal living. Narirat was knowledgeable and articulate, discussing design trends and her vision for creating spaces that felt luxurious yet authentically Thai. "If you're going to be in Hua Hin for a while, perhaps we could have coffee," Narirat said as the event concluded. "I'm always interested in hearing perspectives from successful business people." They exchanged numbers, and Rick walked back to his condominium thinking Narirat was impressive professionally, but he had no romantic expectations. She was 36 years younger, clearly educated and successful, and had given no indication of personal interest beyond professional networking. What Rick did not know was that the entire evening had been carefully orchestrated. Somchai had identified Rick as a wealthy target and created the chance encounter. The networking event was real, but Rick's invitation was not random. And Narirat was not simply an interior designer making connections. She was the network's most valuable asset, an intelligent woman who specialized in building romantic relationships with wealthy older men for systematic financial exploitation. The trap had been set. The coffee meeting took place 4 days later at a quiet cafe near the railway station. Narirat arrived exactly on time, dressed casually but stylishly, her hair down this time. Their conversation felt remarkably easy and natural. Narirat did not flirt or behave like women seeking wealthy foreign boyfriends. Instead, she asked intelligent questions about his business career and shared thoughtful observations about Thai and American business cultures. Successful American businessmen often think they understand business everywhere because they succeeded at home, Narirat said. But Thailand is different. Relationships matter more than contracts. Patience matters more than speed. Understanding these differences separates foreigners who succeed here from those who fail. Rick found himself nodding enthusiastically. Narirat spoke about her career studying interior design at Chulalongkorn University, working at high-end Phuket hotels, then moving to Hua Hin 5 years earlier to start her own consulting business. "The work is good, but challenging being a woman in this field," she explained. "I've had to work twice as hard to prove my capabilities." Their coffee meeting extended to nearly 2 hours. When they parted, Narirat suggested meeting again for dinner. Rick accepted immediately, returning to his condominium with pleasant anticipation he had not experienced in years. Over 3 weeks, Rick and Narirat met 6 more times. The progression felt natural and unhurried. They explored night markets, visited temples where she explained Buddhist concepts, took a day trip to Khao Sam Roy Yacht National Park. Rick found himself genuinely happy for the first time since Linda's death. What made the relationship feel authentic was Narirat's independence and apparent lack of financial interest. She paid for her own meals, declined expensive gifts, never asked about his finances. When he mentioned selling his business and retiring, she simply said, "That must give you wonderful freedom to explore what makes you happy." Rick increasingly initiated their meetings, found himself thinking about Narirat constantly. He was wary of women who pursued wealthy foreign men too aggressively, but Narirat did not fit that pattern. If anything, she seemed hesitant about spending time with him, mentioning how busy she was with work. By late August, as his rental period ended, Rick extended for 2 more months. He called his children to tell them he was staying longer. Jennifer was concerned. "Dad, just be careful. We've read stories about older men getting scammed in Thailand. Not saying that's happening, but be smart." Rick assured her he was being careful, that there was nothing to worry about. He did not mention Narirat. The relationship felt too fragile to expose to his children's potential skepticism. In early September, the relationship shifted from friendship to romance. They had driven to a quiet beach to watch sunset, and Narirat became unexpectedly emotional. "I was married before. It ended badly," she said quietly. "My husband was a Thai businessman in terrible debt. When I tried to help, he blamed me, became cruel. We divorced 3 years ago. Since then, I have not been in a relationship. I have been afraid to trust anyone." She turned to Rick with tears in her eyes. "But with you, I feel safe. You are kind and gentle. You listen. You do not try to control me. I have been fighting these feelings because I am afraid of being hurt again, but I cannot fight them anymore." Rick felt his heart swell. This beautiful, intelligent woman was revealing vulnerability that mirrored his own losses. He told her about Linda, about his loneliness, about how meeting Narirat had made him feel alive again. They kissed as the sun disappeared, and Rick felt certain he had found something precious and real. What he did not know was that every word of Narirat's story had been carefully crafted fiction. There had been no husband, no divorce, no emotional walls being broken down. There was only a skilled actress performing a role perfected through multiple previous victims, saying exactly what a lonely man needed to hear. The trap was closing around Rick Thompson, and he walked into it willingly, with his heart wide open and his judgment fatally compromised. By October 2018, Rick and Narirat had been in a romantic relationship for 6 weeks. Rick had extended his Thailand stay indefinitely, his San Diego house now managed by a property company. His children expressed concern, but Rick assured them he was happy. Narirat introduced him to her family in early October, a meeting at what she described as her parents' home outside Hua Hin. The modest but clean house hosted her parents, who welcomed Rick warmly. They accepted his gifts with humble appreciation, and her father communicated affection through smiles and gestures, despite speaking no English. Driving back that evening, Rick felt a sense of belonging he had not experienced since Linda's death. He was not just a lonely foreigner, he was becoming part of a family. It was in this emotional state, with his defenses completely dissolved, that Narirat introduced the business proposal that would destroy him. They were having dinner at Rick's condominium when Narirat's expression became serious. "Rick, I need to talk to you about something important. It is about business, but also about us, about our future." Narirat explained she wanted to create her own boutique resort. "There is a perfect property available, 1.2 hectares, 200 meters from the beach. I have been designing the concept for months. 6 luxury bungalows with private pools, central restaurant and bar, spa facilities." She showed Rick detailed architectural renderings and business projections. The designs were impressive, modern yet incorporating traditional Thai elements. Total cost is approximately 45 million baht, about 1.4 million US dollars. I have 7 million baht saved, but I need a partner who understands business and can provide additional capital. She looked directly at Rick. "I am asking you to be that partner. I believe we could build something extraordinary together, not just a business, but a life. It could be our legacy." Rick felt his pulse quicken. This was an invitation to build a shared future, to have purpose and meaning. The resort would give him a reason to wake up enthusiastic each morning. "I need to see all documentation, land titles, construction estimates, business licenses, everything formal," Rick said carefully. "Of course," Narirat agreed immediately. "I would never ask you to invest without complete transparency." Over 2 weeks, Narirat orchestrated meetings that appeared to address all concerns. Rick met the landowner, visited the property, met with an architect presenting detailed construction plans. Every document looked authentic to his untrained eye. But every document was a forgery. Every professional was an actor. The landowner did not actually own the property. The architect was not licensed. The entire performance was designed to overcome Rick's natural caution. Rick, lonely and in love, saw only what he wanted to see: a beautiful woman offering partnership and purpose, a legitimate business opportunity, a future promising happiness. His business instincts, which had served him for 40 years, were overwhelmed by emotional needs and desperate desire to believe his life could be rebuilt. In late October 2018, Richard Thompson agreed to invest $1,200,000 into what he believed would be a boutique resort, generating retirement income while giving him a shared project with the woman he loved. He had just signed away his entire future. The woman, smiling at him with tears of joy, was not celebrating their partnership but calculating how quickly she could extract his money before disappearing. The legal structure was presented as standard procedure for foreign investment in Thailand. Narirat explained that Thai law prevented foreigners from owning land directly. The property and business would need to be registered under her name, but Rick would be listed as a major shareholder once the business was operational. "This is how all foreign investment works in Thailand," Narirat said. "Once we establish the company properly and get government approvals, we will register you officially. The important thing is that we trust each other completely." She showed Rick what appeared to be legal documents from a Thai law firm, outlining the partnership structure and shareholder agreements. The documents were impressive, dozens of pages stamped with official-looking seals. Everything seemed legitimate. What Rick did not know was that the law firm did not exist. The documents were elaborate forgeries. The entire legal framework was an illusion designed to make the theft appear legitimate. The financial transfers began in early November 2018. The first payment was $300,000 for land deposit and architectural fees. Narirat provided receipts, updated projections, and photographs of the property with surveyor stakes marking where each bungalow would be positioned. The second transfer occurred in late November, $450,000 for construction materials, permits, and contractor fees. Narirat showed purchase orders from suppliers and a timeline indicating foundation work would begin in January 2019. Thanksgiving in California was bittersweet. His children noticed he was energized and engaged, constantly talking about Thailand and the resort project. "Dad, you're talking about investing more than half your retirement savings in a foreign country with a woman you've known for less than 4 months?" Michael said carefully. "Have you had independent lawyers review everything?" Rick bristled at his son's skepticism. "Michael, I ran a $50 million business successfully for decades. I know how to evaluate an investment." Jennifer was more direct. "Dad, we're worried you're being scammed. Older men getting involved with younger women in Thailand and losing their money, it's practically a cliche. Please, just have independent verification." Rick left California earlier than planned, hurt by what he interpreted as his children's inability to accept his happiness. Narirat was waiting at the airport with tears and apologies. The third transfer occurred in mid-December, $300,000. Narirat showed updated renderings, introduced the general contractor, and took Rick to the property where survey equipment suggested imminent construction. The final transfer occurred in late January 2019, $150,000. This brought Rick's total investment to exactly $1,200,000, nearly all his liquid retirement savings. By early February, Narirat provided constant updates, photographs of foundation work, invoices from suppliers, meetings with government officials. Everything seemed to be progressing, perhaps slightly behind schedule due to bureaucratic delays, but fundamentally sound. Rick had never been happier. He was living in Thailand with the woman he loved, building a business that gave him purpose. He called his children occasionally, but the conversations were strained. What Rick did not know was that not a single dollar had gone toward land purchase, construction, or any legitimate expense. Every cent had been immediately distributed among the criminal network. The foundation work he had seen was on a different property, photographed carefully to match angles of the plot where the resort was supposedly being built. The contractors and officials he had met were actors, and Narirat was preparing for the final phase, extracting any remaining money Rick might have access to, then vanishing completely. The first crack in the illusion appeared in mid-February 2019. Rick tried to wire another $50,000 for what Narirat described as unexpected permit fees, but his U.S. bank flagged the transaction as suspicious. "Mr. Thompson, you've transferred over $1 million to Thailand in the past 3 months," the bank representative explained. "We're required to verify these are legitimate transactions. We need documentation, business registration, land titles, construction contracts." When Rick mentioned the bank's requirements to Narirat that evening, her reaction was the first indication something was wrong. Her face flashed with anger before she composed herself. "Why do American banks always assume Thai people are criminals?" she said sharply. "We have provided all documentation already. Do they think I am scamming you?" Rick quickly apologized, but doubt had been planted. Over the next week, Rick requested copies of all official documentation to send to his bank. When he attempted to verify them through online government databases, he could find no record of the business registration or land purchase. Narirat had explanations ready online. Databases were incomplete and outdated. New registrations often did not appear for months. The land transaction was still in final processing stages. Rick wanted to believe these explanations. The alternative was too catastrophic to contemplate. In early March, Michael called. He had hired a private investigator. "Dad, you need to listen," Michael said tensely. "The investigator can find no record of the business registration, no land title transfer, and no construction permits. The law firm doesn't exist. The address is an empty storefront. The lawyers listed don't appear in any Thai legal directories." Rick felt his stomach clench. "Your investigator is incompetent. I've seen the property. I've met the contractors." Michael took a deep breath. "Dad, the investigator also found that Narirat Sornchai, if that's even her real name, has been linked to 2 other similar cases. In 2016, a British man filed a police report claiming she defrauded him of $800,000. In 2017, an Australian made similar claims. Both cases were investigated, but no arrests were made because she disappeared." Rick's hands were shaking. "That's impossible. Your investigator is confusing people with similar names. I'm not having this conversation anymore, Michael." He hung up, but the seed of doubt had grown. That evening, Rick drove to the property where the resort was supposedly being constructed. He found an empty lot with overgrown weeds. No foundation work, no equipment, nothing except the surveyor stakes from months earlier. He drove to Narirat's office address. The building was real, but the unit she had specified was occupied by an accounting firm whose employees had never heard of Narirat Sornchai or any interior design business. He called her immediately, his voice barely controlled. "Where are you? I'm at your office building, and there's no interior design firm here. Where is your actual office?" Long pause. Then Narirat's voice came back, cold and flat. "Rick, you are checking up on me? After everything we have built together, you trust your son's lies more than you trust me? I am very disappointed. I need time to think about whether we can continue if you do not trust me. Do not call me again until you decide whether you believe in me or your family's racist lies." She hung up. When Rick tried calling back, her phone went directly to voicemail. Rick sat in his car, his mind racing through months of memories, trying to separate truth from fiction. Even now, part of him wanted to believe there was a reasonable explanation. He spent the night searching online for information about Narirat Sornchai and romance scams in Thailand. The more he read, the more he recognized patterns: the patient trust, cultivation, fake family introductions, business opportunities requiring large investments in the Thai woman's name, isolation from concerned friends and family. Every warning sign had been present, every red flag had waved directly in front of his face, and he had ignored all of them. By dawn, Rick had to face the possibility that Michael was right, that he had been systematically defrauded by a woman who had never loved him. Rick spent the following week desperately investigating, trying to verify or disprove the fraud allegations. He contacted the real estate agent. The number led to a disconnected line. He tried to reach the architect. That number also went nowhere. Every thread he pulled unraveled into nothing. Every professional Narirat had introduced him to had vanished. Every document now appeared to be an elaborate forgery. Narirat herself had not responded to any calls or messages since their confrontation. Her social media accounts had gone silent. Rick drove to the house where he had met her parents, but the family living there told him they had rented the property for a single day 3 months earlier to a Thai woman who paid cash and provided no contact information. The elderly couple he had believed were Narirat's parents had been actors hired for a few hours. The emotional family dinner had been nothing more than theater. On March 22nd, Rick received an email from his bank. They had completed their investigation, working with Thai banking authorities to trace where his money had actually gone. The account he had been transferring money to was not an escrow account. It was a personal account registered to a woman whose name was not Narirat Sornchai. Within hours of each transfer, the money had been immediately distributed to multiple accounts across Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore, in patterns consistent with money laundering and organized fraud. Thai banking authorities had frozen approximately $17,000, but the vast majority of Rick's money was gone, distributed across international financial networks that would be nearly impossible to trace and recover. Rick sat reading and rereading the email, the reality finally becoming undeniable. He had not made a business investment. He had been systematically robbed by a criminal organization specializing in romance, fraud, targeting wealthy foreign men. Every moment of affection, every tear Narirat had shed, every promise she had made, all of it had been calculated manipulation, designed to extract maximum money before disappearing. Rick tried one final time to reach her, sending a text. "I know the truth. I know everything was a lie. Just tell me why. Tell me if any moment between us was real." The message showed as delivered but was never read. The phone number went dead the following day. On March 25th, Rick filed a formal police report with the tourist police in Hua Hin. The officer was professional but not optimistic. "We see cases like this regularly," the officer explained. "International romance fraud is sophisticated business. The people running these operations know how to avoid detection. The woman you knew probably is not even in Thailand anymore." The officer promised to coordinate with financial crime units in Bangkok, but was clear that the chances of recovering Rick's money or apprehending the criminals were extremely low. Rick returned to his condominium feeling more devastated than when Linda died. Cancer was cruel, but not malicious. Linda's death had been tragic, but not a betrayal. What Narirat had done felt infinitely worse, a deliberate, calculated destruction of his trust, his finances, and his hopes for the future. He called Michael that night and admitted everything. Michael was sympathetic, immediately offering to help navigate the legal and financial recovery process. "Dad, I'm so sorry this happened, but you need to come home. There's nothing left for you in Thailand now." But Rick could not bring himself to leave immediately. Leaving would mean admitting complete defeat. So he stayed in Hua Hin, living on the small amount of money he had retained, trying to understand how he could have been so thoroughly deceived. The answer was that the lies had been there from the very beginning. The chance meeting, the networking event, the careful cultivation of trust, all of it had been orchestrated. There had never been a genuine moment. There had only been a predator and her prey. By early April 2019, Rick had moved from the comfortable condominium to a cheap room in a budget hotel. His retirement that was supposed to last comfortably for the rest of his life was now reduced to perhaps 2 or 3 years of frugal living. And the woman he had believed would share the rest of his life had vanished completely, leaving behind nothing but forged documents, disconnected phone numbers, and the hollow ache of betrayal that Rick suspected would never completely heal. In the weeks following his realization, Rick became obsessed with finding Narirat and recovering some portion of his stolen money. He hired a private investigator in Bangkok, spending $3,000 for 2 weeks of research that revealed Narirat had used at least 4 different names and had connections to a network involved in similar scams throughout Southeast Asia. The investigator identified 2 other victims, a 65-year-old Australian who had lost $780,000 in 2017 and a British man defrauded of $820,000 in 2016. Both men's stories were devastatingly similar. The investigator's report concluded that Narirat was likely no longer in Thailand, having crossed into Laos in late March. The criminal network she worked with was sophisticated and had connections to corrupt officials. "The probability of recovering your money is less than 5%, the investigator told Rick bluntly. "The probability of her facing prosecution is less than 10%. I am sorry, but you need to understand the reality." Rick's U.S. bank continued efforts to trace the funds, but confirmed what the investigator said: the money had been rapidly dispersed and laundered, making recovery extremely unlikely. By May 2019, Rick had exhausted his investigative options. He faced a terrible decision: return to the United States with the approximately $250,000 he had remaining, or stay in Thailand continuing to search for Narirat. Logic said return to America, accept defeat, rebuild what he could. But Rick was consumed by anger and an irrational need to see Narirat face consequences. So Rick stayed. He moved to an even cheaper accommodation, a single room in an aging building with communal bathrooms. His monthly rent was 3,000 baht, less than $100. The neighborhood was populated by Thai working-class families and foreigners, surviving on minimal pensions. Rick's routine became depressing: market food, police station visits, hours reviewing documents, trying to find any detail he might have missed. His children begged him to come home, offering help, but Rick refused. "Dad, you are destroying what is left of your life by staying there," Michael said during one call. "The money is gone. The woman is gone. Please come home." But Rick could not leave. Leaving felt like admitting Narirat had won totally and permanently. By August 2019, Rick had lost 30 pounds. His blood pressure was dangerously high, and he was surviving on less than $300 per month. His room was unbearably hot, his clothes worn thin. He no longer looked like the confident businessman who had arrived 14 months earlier. The investigators' report had been correct. The money was gone. Narirat was gone. Justice was not coming. But Rick, stubborn and desperate, continued searching for something that did not exist, a resolution that would never come. By December 2019, Rick Thompson had been in Thailand for 17 months. His savings had dwindled to approximately $80,000. His health had declined significantly: untreated hypertension, stress-induced gastrointestinal problems, and persistent insomnia that left him exhausted. The police investigations had produced no arrests, no recovered funds. Both Thai authorities and the FBI had closed their files. In January 2020, Rick received an email that seemed like a breakthrough. The email claimed to be from a Thai lawyer who specialized in recovering funds from romance fraud cases. The lawyer wrote that he had successfully represented 3 previous victims of Narirat Sornchai and was confident he could recover substantial portions of Rick's stolen money. The fees were substantial: $20,000 up front, plus 30% of recovered funds. But if the lawyer could genuinely recover a significant portion of Rick's $1,200,000, the cost would be justified. Rick should have been more suspicious, but desperation had destroyed his judgment completely. He withdrew $20,000 from his remaining savings and wired it to the lawyer's account. The lawyer provided updates. Over 3 weeks he had located assets, filed legal claims, was negotiating with banks. Then, in early February, the lawyer stopped responding. The website disappeared. The phone number became disconnected. Rick realized he had been scammed again by someone specifically targeting previous fraud victims, knowing they were vulnerable and desperate for recovery. The secondary victimization represented psychological devastation that Rick simply could not process. His remaining savings now totaled approximately $60,000, less than 3% of the wealth he had arrived with. In March 2020, as the COVID-19 pandemic began shutting down international travel, Rick finally accepted he had no choice but to leave Thailand. He could not stay indefinitely with his savings nearly exhausted and his health failing. Michael purchased a ticket, but the flight was canceled due to pandemic restrictions. Rick was trapped for 3 additional months, surviving on less than $200 per month, his health deteriorating further. Finally, in June 2020, Rick secured a spot on a repatriation flight organized by the U.S. Embassy. He arrived in San Diego with $63,000 remaining, chronic health conditions, and no home. He had sold his California house the previous year. Michael and Jennifer arranged for their father to stay temporarily with Michael's family while they helped reconstruct minimal financial stability. Rick applied for Social Security at 65. His monthly payment was $1,900, barely enough to cover basic expenses. By late 2020, Rick had moved into a subsidized senior apartment complex. His unit was 400 square feet, furnished with donated items. He had no car, relying on public transportation. His relationship with his children had improved slightly, but the damage remained. They helped with expenses when they could, but Rick could sense their discomfort. Their successful father had been reduced to a nearly impoverished senior living on charity. Rick's physical health had stabilized with better medical access, but the emotional damage remained profound. He struggled with depression, sleeping only a few hours each night, tormented by memories of Narirat. In late 2021, Rick learned that Narirat, or someone matching her description using a different name, had been arrested in Malaysia, but was released after 3 days due to insufficient evidence. She vanished again, presumably continuing her criminal career somewhere in Southeast Asia. Richard Thompson is now 73 years old. He still lives in the subsidized senior apartment in San Diego, surviving on his Social Security payment of $1,900 per month and occasional financial assistance from Michael and Jennifer. His health remains fragile. He takes medication daily for diabetes, hypertension, and depression. His savings, once more than $2 million, have been exhausted completely. He has no assets, no property, no financial security beyond his government benefits. He does not travel anymore. He cannot afford vacations, restaurants, or any of the leisure activities he had envisioned filling his retirement. His daily routine consists of walks around his neighborhood, volunteering at a local food bank, and watching television in his small apartment. He has few friends. Most people from his successful business days have drifted away, uncomfortable with his reduced circumstances and the embarrassing story of how he lost everything. Rick occasionally speaks at programs organized by senior advocacy groups, warning other older adults about romance scams and the dangers of international investment fraud. He has become, reluctantly, the cautionary tale he never imagined, being the successful businessman destroyed by loneliness and manipulation, the wealthy man reduced to poverty by trusting the wrong person. His children visit regularly and have urged him to write about his experience, perhaps find some meaning in his suffering by helping others avoid similar mistakes. But Rick finds it too painful to revisit the details of how thoroughly Narirat deceived him, how completely he ignored warning signs that now seem blindingly obvious. "I came to Thailand a millionaire," Rick tells the few people willing to listen to his story. "I believed I was smart enough, experienced enough, careful enough to protect myself from scams. I had run a $50 million business successfully for decades. I thought I understood people and could recognize manipulation when I saw it." He pauses, his voice becoming quiet and hollow. "But none of that mattered. She was better at deception than I was at detection. She studied me, understood my vulnerabilities, and played me perfectly. And I walked into the trap willingly, gratefully, because I wanted so desperately to believe that someone could love me, that my life could have meaning again after my wife died." Rick Thompson now understands that his destruction was not the result of a single poor decision, but rather a cascading series of choices driven by emotional needs that overwhelmed his judgment. His loneliness after Linda's death made him vulnerable. His distance from his children left him isolated and seeking connection. His wealth made him an attractive target, and his desperate desire for purpose and partnership made him willing to ignore warning signs that should have been immediately obvious. Narirat Sornchai, or whatever her real name might be, has never been arrested or prosecuted for defrauding Rick Thompson. She has never returned a single dollar of the $1,200,000 she stole from him. She has never faced consequences for destroying his retirement, his security, and his future. She is presumably still operating somewhere in Southeast Asia, identifying new targets, cultivating new relationships, executing the same sophisticated fraud that has proven so devastatingly effective against lonely, wealthy men who mistake calculated manipulation for genuine affection. And Rick Thompson, who once had everything a man could want, now has almost nothing except regret, shame, and the bitter awareness that he will spend the rest of his life paying for the months when he believed a beautiful lie was actually the truth he had been desperately searching for. His is not a story with a happy ending or a moral redemption. It is simply the truth of what happens when loneliness meets sophisticated manipulation, when hope overwhelms caution, and when a successful life built over decades can be destroyed in months by someone who understands exactly how to exploit human vulnerability for profit. Rick Thompson came to Thailand seeking paradise. Instead, he found a trap that cost him everything: his money, his dignity, his future, and perhaps most devastating of all, his belief that the world contained people who might love him for who he was, rather than what he had. If this story has resonated with you, or if you know someone who might benefit from hearing it, please consider subscribing to this channel. These stories matter. These warnings matter. And the more people who understand how sophisticated romance fraud has become, the fewer victims will suffer the devastating losses that destroyed Richard Thompson's life. Thank you for watching, and please be careful out there.